So welcome to the second in our series of webinars to help our clients better understand some of the offerings we have, especially on the Model 24 stuff. This one, last month we did our new MDR security services. This month we're doing Keeper, which is actual, I'll call it real password management system as opposed to the stuff that we've been using prior to that. And for some reason, it was decided that the person who actually gives this webinar should actually know what they're talking about. And for some reason, that did not include me. So with that, I'm going to give this over to Kurt and let him play with us. So with that.
Bob, I fully believe that your MCSE means you know about this.
That is true. My 2003 MCSE.
That's right. So hi everybody, Kurt Ketchum, Managed Service Director of Managed Services here at Simplex-IT. We're going to talk about Keeper, exactly what it is, how it functions, how it can impact your end users, and we're going to do a little short demo just so you see how easy it is to use. So let's dive into it. First, let's start with what a password manager is. Password managers, other common ones are going to be comparable would be like LastPass, 1Password, Bitwarden, and there's a bunch out there. Ideally, what they're going to do, they're going to handle logins for multiple user accounts. So this can be your Windows domain account to log into your computer. This can be a QuickBooks account. This can be any number of accounts that an end user might use that might log into each and every day. Password managers are going to securely store those passwords and credentials. The last bullet point down there talking about password files or sticky notes. All of our users, even ourselves, have been guilty of it at some point where we've have this master Word document or text file or a spreadsheet where we keep all of our usernames and passwords in there. Unfortunately, those are some of the first files a malicious threat actor will go after. Another handy feature of a password manager is that the good ones will auto-complete username and password fields for you when you go to log into the website. Worst case scenario is you have to click a button to fill the record in there. Saves you having to always remember the password, especially when the IT people like us are saying you need to use more complex passwords because password one or I love my cat doesn't it's not secure, it's not long enough, it's not complex enough. And that's the other thing, that they do generate those random passwords and save them for us. So at a minimum, that's what a good password manager will do. So what is Keeper? Keeper Security specifically, it's an enterprise-grade password manager. It's designed for organizations that you provide to your end users so that they can save their company-related credentials securely and conveniently. This gives you as the organization the visibility, control, logging, and reporting that you need around password management. This will work to help you meet insurance and compliance requirements. Especially cyber insurance policies these days. One of the questions is going to be, do you have a password manager deployed across your organization? Yes, this is how you can check yes on that one. Rounding up, Keeper Security is pretty quick to deploy and easy to use, especially if you're coming to Simplex-IT on a model year 24 agreement. We consider it part of our project. Part of our onboarding process for the agreement. So if you are annually signing up for a new agreement with us, this is just another part of that process that we'll do each year. So we will help you deploy this tool as part of the organization. We'll set up any of the integrations that need to be set up. We can provide some training. We can help users migrate their passwords into Keeper as well. And primarily, this is really going to help safeguard against things like ransomware attacks because it's making those credentials secure. It's storing them in a safe location, an encrypted location that only the end user has access to. And the one thing that I really love about Keeper Security is we can use it to integrate with your existing identity provider. For most of our clients, what that means is the email address and password that you log into for work, your Microsoft 365 email account, you can automatically use those credentials to log into Keeper. So it's just one password to remember, as opposed to having another username and password to remember for yet another service that then manages all the passwords. No. This is just a single username and password that you can use to access your passwords in Keeper. So it helps simplify things, makes it more easy to adopt. The other thing about Keeper is it's really easy to use. It's very accessible. By default, anybody that has a Keeper license gets a personal web vault. All right, so the web vault is where all the credentials get saved at. When I say personal web vault, this is at the company level. So an employee has an employee web vault where they can put in their username and passwords. They can even do other common fields like addresses, credit cards, other things that you would typically fill in on a website relating, and this is still at the company level. Keeper supports all major browsers. There's a plugin for all major browsers. So that includes Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Firefox. I think Safari is in the list. There is a native desktop app that you can just download straight from the Windows Store or the Microsoft Store, or you can just download the installer and run. The nice thing about that is the desktop app allows you to fill in credentials on things that aren't always websites. So if you have like a thick app, like say QuickBooks, where you may have to plug in username and password, cool. It can help handle that. So that way you don't have to go and copy the username or password out of Keeper. In theory, it can automatically fill it in. And there's also the traditional mobile apps, iOS and Android. I personally have this on my phone, and it makes doing stuff for work on my phone a lot easier. So if I have to log into, say, the Azure portal because I need to reboot a VM, boop, I can just automatically fill in credentials with the Keeper app. Moral of the story is Keeper can run just about anywhere one of your users will be using it at, whether it be on their laptop, desktop, web browser, or on their phone. It is easily accessible, and you can automatically plug those credentials in from any of those applications. This is the important part about what Keeper offers, and probably what differentiates it from other password managers out there. So this is around what we are offering as part of our model year agreement. So this is included in the Keeper licensing that we offer. At a minimum is that Keeper Enterprise Vault. That Enterprise Vault, that is, as a company, you would have an organization, and inside there you have all your users. All those users, in theory, could have a Keeper account. It's managed at an organizational level. It is backed by enterprise-grade security. By default, the organization does not have access into the individual vaults. Those are specific to the end users. However, if you need to transfer the contents of one vault to another, that can be done. So if a user loses their master password, since we're pushing 365 single sign-on, you don't need to use master passwords. But if a user does forget their master password, they would just create a new account, and we can actually move the contents from one vault, the old vault, to the new vault, and they retain all the credentials. The other big feature is the advanced two-factor authentication. Is hooking into your Microsoft 365 MFA. So not another MFA app on your phone, not another text message-based MFA. This is hooking into your 365 MFA. So it's just that much more convenient to use. The single sign-on authentication. It's using your 365 credentials, in this instance, to log into the individual accounts. This makes it easier to use for your end users. The Azure AD Entra ID provisioning. What that is simply stating that we don't have to manually go through and set up users inside a Keeper. We can set it up so that when you assign them a Microsoft 365 license, whether it be just a mailbox or they get the full business premium suite, we can have it configured that it automatically provisions them in Keeper, and within a few minutes, an email will show up in their mailbox inviting them to go finish setting up their Keeper account. It's pretty low maintenance. I did that as part of the demo last night. The demo, I want to give it a little bit. I set it up last night, and within minutes of putting my user in the correct security group, boom, I have the email. I didn't have to go add another account inside a Keeper and provision it. It just automatically did it. Couple other features included is 100 gigabytes of secure file storage. If you need a secure place to store files that are of high importance to you, Keeper does offer a place to do so. There is a developer API for password rotation. Some of you may have developers on staff or vendors who may be interested in this, or if you're writing custom applications that you guys use, and there's credentials being passed around inside the code. Instead of hard coding that username and password inside the code for that application, Keeper has an option to rotate the password into the code automatically as the program runs. So that is something available in our feature set. And finally, one of the big ones in here that I also like is that for every Keeper license in your tenant, so every employee would essentially get 5 personal vaults for family members. So, and we drink the same Kool-Aid, right? So we're using Keeper internally here at Simplex-IT. So I have set this up for myself. So not only do I have my Simplex-IT account for where I put all my passwords and credentials at, I have a personal vault. I have actually 5 of them. So I not only have my own personal one where I can put my personal credentials in there, so like my personal email, banking passwords, etc. I can put in there. I can also set up my wife and my in-laws and my kids, right? So this is just something that's nice to offer to employees as a way to get them to stop putting those passwords on a sticky note and taping it under the keyboard, or stop putting them in spreadsheets. And it does help divide, the work and the personal a little bit better as well. Some optional add-ons that we can tack on to any Keeper licensing is, instead of 100 gigabytes, we can do a terabyte of secure file storage. We can also do it. There's an advanced reporting and alerts module. So if you need advanced reporting on what users are doing inside a Keeper, we can do that. Breach watch, dark web monitoring is actually pretty cool. We have offered a dark web service for years as part of our agreements. That dark web service, what it does is we feed your company's email domain into the dark web service, and it'll go out onto the dark web and it'll look for any password hits according to your email domain. So it'll go out there and look for any compromises identified to @simplex-it.com, and it'll spit back a report to us saying, hey, Bob's user account was compromised on this website with this password. It's great, but a lot of times you do get some false positives out of it, where it's like, well, okay, this person hasn't worked here in 10 years, or, we don't have a webmaster at simplex-it.com email account. So, you might find a made up credential in there, or a fake compromise. Whereas Breach Watch, the way it works with inside a Keeper is that it is looking specifically at the credentials stored in Keeper. So if you're storing all of your company-based credentials in Keeper, it's only going to trigger alerts based upon those credentials that are actually in Keeper. So it's much more targeted. That means if the credentials aren't in Keeper and it's compromised, not going to know about it, but this is much more targeted, kind of why I like it. I think it's a big perk. And then we have the secrets manager, which is that DevOps password rotation we were talking, one of the options we were talking about. Moving on to the next section, it's how does it work? I wanted to toss this in here. It's a bit of a technical slide, but from the end user perspective, starting in the upper left, you're going to use your identity provider, Azure AD, Microsoft 365, a single sign-on to log in. You can access other applications via single sign-on access, and then boom, you're right into the enterprise password manager, where you can do all your passwords, credentials. You can share passwords, by the way, with other users or with groups of users. So at an administrative level, you can set up groups and you can share passwords with groups. So this is a nice way to share passwords with teams, say an accounting team, HR team, a C-suite. It's a good way to share passwords with those groups and do that. So like I said, it's a bit of a technical slide. It does give you an idea of some of the stuff you can do. For our co-managed IT clients out there, Comis clients, you would have access to the Keeper admin console. So from there, you can do that security audit. You can look at the event logs and notifications. If there's any compliance reporting, if there's any type of SIEM integration you want to set up, we can help you set that up. The breach watch, dark web tracking, we can do as well. I'm not gonna lie, I'm flying through this a little faster than I thought I was going to. That does bring us to the pricing slide. Some of you may have already signed up for model year 24. This licensing does apply to you. And for anybody who hasn't signed up for model year 24 agreement yet, this is essentially how it will look like. We're including licensing for Keeper for 10% of your licensed 365 users. So if you have 50 licensed 365 users, we're going to give you 5 Keeper licenses included. So that's really great from I want to go and try it perspective. So if you want to see what Keeper is like, this is a great way, especially if you have an internal IT department, you're a co-managed client, really good way to go and get your feet wet with Keeper, see how it works, see how it can be managed, see how it would roll out to all of your users. Beyond that 10%, it is going to be an additional $6 per user per month. Of all the other add-ons that we have, just reach out to us. We can discuss the pricing on those as well. Beyond that, I'm going to get to the question slide. And I think somebody already asked a question in the chat. I think so. So the question is, can the multi-factor authentication be configured to satisfy the requirements for CMMC MFA, particularly for administrators? Yes, because we're subjecting, that is actually in the 365, Microsoft 365, Azure AD, Entra ID. It's all the same thing. That is where you would, in those conditional access policies is how you can specify this. And you can actually specifically target Keeper if you wanted to. You can target just your administrators. My personal preference, if you're logging into a password manager, I want to make you MFA regardless. So my preference is to make all users MFA into Keeper. And there's options for how frequently you log into Keeper as well, or MFA into Keeper as well. That is pretty customizable. Additional questions before I dive into a quick demo. And Bob flipped on his camera, so that means he wants to say something.
Well, no, I was going to double down on a couple of things that you said. Number one is that, again, not all of our clients are interested in having this service, and it's a licensed service, so it costs us money for every license for all of their employees. That's why for the Model 24, we basically said, hey, we're going to include 10% because we do think it's appropriate at the very least for management, so we're including it there. But you can go with additional licenses certainly if you want to. And Mark, absolutely, as you well know, it has as much to do with how you're configuring the service as the service itself. So you got to make sure that you're doing that appropriately, but and which is pretty much what Kurt was saying, especially when you start taking a look at using the SSO functionality in 365 and then integrating that over on the Keeper side. So just throwing that in.
So I'm going to do a quick little demo from the end user perspective of how Keeper works. Fun fact, I'm actually doing this in Azure Virtual Desktop. So those of you who have heard my Azure Virtual Desktop spiel before, you can just kind of see it in action real quick.
More of a rant than a spiel, but yeah.
Yeah, to each their own, Bob. So what you see here is essentially an end user's Keeper vault. I have dumped a bunch of passwords in here. Most of these are fake because for demonstration purposes. It will try to smartly identify the websites that these are identified to. I'll pick on 365. So as you can see on the Microsoft 365 credential, I do have my email address, my password, and I did randomly generate a password. Don't worry, this account won't exist beyond this webinar, so go ahead and try it. I don't care. And then there's two-factor codes. So this is the MFA, multi-factor authentication. I can actually put the code in here. I can actually go and edit the credential. What website does it go to? I can add file attachments. I can add notes, and I can add a bunch of custom fields as well. So if there's other additional information I want to tie to this specific credential, I can add it in here as essentially metadata. There are other options in here as well. We can add identity and payments. I have added basic contact information. So whenever you go to like a web form and you have to fill out all the same information, what's your first name, what's your last name, what's your address, city, state, zip, phone number, all this other fun stuff, you can automatically fill it in with Keeper. All right. You can also do payment cards. And I did put a fake credit card in here because, yeah. So you can actually put credit cards in here because there's a lot of times where you may be buying something. And you just need to automatically fill in the credit card. This does securely store the credit card information so that when you do go and fill out those forms, it is stored securely on your end. The security audit down here on the left, this essentially tells you what the quality of passwords are that are stored inside a Keeper for your account. So I did randomly generated ones for all of these. If I put in like password 1, it would probably say bad or not strong. It'll tell you if you've reused any and how many of them are weak. So it is looking at each credential going, and it knows if you have reused those credentials or not between those accounts. I don't think, yep, there's nothing in here for breach watch because these were all randomly generated, so none of them have been compromised. And it will do deleted items as well. There's different ways to sort this. You can add a shared folder. You can add folder. So if you want to do a folder structure where you organize these, you can add a folder. And ta-da, you can just drag and drop them in there. Yep, move it. So yeah, easy way to organize passwords. You can do a shared folder. Same concept, but now you're deciding who to share it with. So you can actually share a specific folder with other users or groups within the organization. So let's say you have one master QuickBooks Online account. Cool. This is a way to share that credential securely amongst multiple users. And you can set it so that they can either manage records inside of here. They can manage other users. Can they only view? Can they only edit? Can they edit and share? Multiple options. So I'm currently using the Edge web browser for this demo, and I have installed the Keeper plugin up here. As you can see, it says one matching record. It is for Keeper security. And if I dig into it, there's my username, there's the website address. These are all the backup codes. Sometimes a website, when you create a new account, you set up MFA, they'll give you a bunch of backup codes should you forget MFA or breaks under on whatever application you're using. You can have it autofill on page load. You can even have it auto submit after the autofill, really making it a seamless transition as you're going through the login process. And just to give you an idea of how easily this can work, log out. So I'm here on Hewlett Packard's website, hp.com. If I click the sign in button, it'll take me to the login screen. Keeper automatically filled in the username. I hit the next button. It automatically fills in the password. And I'm logged in. I don't have to remember what the password is. I don't have to copy and paste it out. It automatically filled it in. Incredibly convenient. And this is true of either the web browser, the desktop application, or even the mobile app on your phone. Is it perfect? No, it is not perfect. Sometimes Keeper does try to do a little bit too much. Like I'm just trying to type in something. I don't want it to be autofilled, but it is more of a lifesaver than not. And given the number of credentials I have to remember on a daily basis, has really come in handy for me since we started using it a few months ago internally. And that was a very quick, brief demo of Keeper from an end user perspective. In the chat, Bob addressed it in the chat, but someone's asking if you can import existing accounts and passwords from another service like LastPass. Yes, you can. Most of the password managers out there will export in some type of text format, like a text file or a CSV. And it can be, you can export it and import it. Bob, I think you've gone through the export and import yourself. I know a couple of our other techs have done it themselves in-house. And if there is a question or issue around that process, we will definitely help with the end users on that, exporting and importing the passwords into Keeper.
Yeah, in the case specifically for LastPass, which was the question that was asked, there's two things. One is almost all password managers have the ability to export to an Excel or a CSV file. You have to be careful of that because now you've got this file that has all of your passwords there. Okay, but you can export that and import that into Keeper. However, the Keeper desktop app, which Kurt was talking about, actually has an automated transfer function between it and LastPass. So it will automatically transfer. Now, the only, and this is me, the crotchety old geek, saying, the only concern I have with that is that every password management system has its own little nuanced ways of keeping track of things, of how does it do all of that sort of thing. And sometimes the nuances get lost. So if you have a lot of special details for applications, you might want to go through that transfer process, whether it's exporting and importing or doing it to the application. And then before you drop your other program, look through your stuff and make sure that it came over properly and test it a little bit.
Another question that was asked was, how does it compare to Bitwarden? Bitwarden is another major player in the password management game. To my knowledge, I think there is a free self-hosted version of Bitwarden if you really want to go into self-hosting your own password manager. Bitwarden also does have a pay model where you can, a subscription model where you can pay. Bitwarden does, you would set up direct with Bitwarden. Support would be directly through Bitwarden in those instances. Honestly, I feel like Keeper has a bunch more features. I don't think Bitwarden has any type of dark web ID scanning. I could be wrong though. Don't quote me. The advantage of Keeper is you're getting it through us. So we provide first level support for any issues or questions surrounding Keeper. And if we can't figure out the answer, we have additional resources, including Keeper, who we can go to help figure out what needs to be done. Keeper also has a lot of good documentation at an end user level of how to use your stuff. So not only can we provide training, Keeper has some good self-help articles out there as well. It's a really good full-featured product, in my opinion. Well,
yeah, this is one where Eileen, in your case, you're not really looking for a ton of users or an enterprise solution or whatever, and that's really where Keeper just blows the socks off of Bitwarden. So it really gets down to what Kurt's saying, that our experience, our ability to support it, so on and so forth. It is also, since it's enterprise level, it's undergone more audits, more controls, all of that good, all the good silliness. Oh, that's a good question. How do you move all your prior account?
So the easy part is exporting, importing, and moving into Keeper. The old account that you may be coming from, whether it be Bitwarden, LastPass, 1Password, we can work with you on how to close out those accounts. Ultimately, that's going to fall on the end user to perform. And Bob, feel free to correct me on this.
Yeah, well, something the problem is exactly this, is that it's dependent upon the other party, the other third party service that you've been currently or have been using up to this point. Because essentially, if you do nothing, then that product stays there for as long as your subscription has lasted, and probably a good longer time afterwards. So it is one of those where if you want to be careful, yes, you do. You would basically do that migration, that conversion over to Keeper. You would again test it, make sure it's working, make sure that as best as you can that stuff is looking appropriately. And then, and we can help you with this, check to see what your current provider does when you cancel a subscription with them or you cancel the product, however it's defined. If they're not clearly telling you what they do, then assume that it's still going to be out there. And it could be you go in and you start deleting the accounts and the passwords that you have, or it could be you can just delete your account or cancel your account or whatever. But if you do have any critical passwords that you're absolutely, like the banking password or this, that, change. If you really want to be extra sure, change the password once you migrate.
And if you
But
are
we'll help you with it.
And if you are migrating from like a Excel spreadsheet with all your passwords in it, we'll definitely help you delete it. We'll make sure that that gets purged out when you do migrate in. I know one question that will probably come up from our co-managed IT folks is, how does this compare to MyGlue and IT Glue? Because we do offer MyGlue and IT Glue, and what that is a collaborative tool for sharing credentials and documentation and a bunch of information. At the end of the day, MyGlue is focused at like an IT department. So if you have an internal IT department and and there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 of you, it helps you to share passwords, not just internally, but with us as your service provider. Keeper is focused at the end user, at the employee, and managing their credentials that they use on a daily basis for work purposes. So we're not leaving MyGlue and IT Glue. There's still a lot of value for that for us, but we are rolling out Keeper at the individual user level because there's a lot of benefit there. So
the other thing I would add to that is that IT Glue, MyGlue is a document management system that includes credentials and passwords. Okay, it did not include it to start with, but it added it as a feature later on, and it does a much better job than your Excel worksheet. Okay, Keeper is from beginning to end, soup to nuts, an enterprise level password and credential management system, period. And so this is one of those where when you look at your organization, and we are not taking IT Glue away, we are not taking MyGlue away. If you already have credentials in there, bless you, you can keep them, you can do whatever. We're moving ours out. We've already moved the individual stuff, and we're moving it out from a departmental level, from an organizational level, over to Keeper, because Keeper is a more mature product, and this is what it's supposed to do. This is what it's there for. But I want to be very clear: we are not taking IT MyGlue away from anybody. So cool.
Unless anybody has more questions, that's all I have.
All right, appreciate it. And love to get some feedback on these. I think our next one is on Bigger Brains. Is that what it is? And Bigger Brains is one of the unsung heroes. I really am looking for ways to get that more used by our clients. The ability, gets back to that whole congratulations, you just spent $2,000, $3,000 for a new computer, but if the users don't know how to use them any more effectively, is it the best investment? And Bigger Brains is a great way to get your clients more effective and to increase the productivity. So we'll be talking about that at the next webinar. So thank you, Kurt, because otherwise I would have had to do this, and that would not have gone well.
Don't sell your MCSE short, Bob.
All right, that's all I got.
Thanks everybody for attending.
Yep. Bye.